I locked myself in the bathroom because I thought my husband was going to unalive me. I've been married for 4 years. In the grand timeline of a life, 4 years is a blink. When I see couples at the grocery store celebrating their silver anniversaries, or my parents talking about 35 years of thick and thin, our marriage looks like a prototype, a baby marriage that hasn't even had the chance to grow up yet. But time is relative. When you are living in a house where the air changes density based on a man's mood, 4 years feels like a century. I have aged in ways that don't show up in mirrors, but in the way I flinch when a cupboard closes too loudly. When I met him, I thought I had found the exception to every rule. He was a provider, a protector, and a man who seemed to genuinely enjoy the quiet life. He was the kind of man who would hold the car door open not just for the first month, but for the first year. He insisted on taking care of everything. He told me that my job was to create a sanctuary for us. It sounded romantic back then. It sounded like I was being cherished. I didn't realize that a sanctuary is just another word for a room you aren't allowed to leave. The hitting started around the end of our first year. We were arguing about something trivial. I think I had forgotten to pick up a specific brand of coffee he liked. It wasn't even a shout. It was a sudden, sharp slap across the face that left me more confused than pained. He cried afterward. He got on his knees, buried his face in my lap, and sobbed. He told me he was stressed, that he was terrified of losing me, and that he just lost control because he loves me too much. I believed him, because I wanted to believe him. I didn't see it coming, even when the pattern was staring me right in the face. But the hitting didn't stop. It evolved. It became a language we spoke in private. It graduated from slaps to shoves, and eventually, to full-blown beatings that left me hiding in the house for a week at a time, so the neighbors wouldn't see the yellowing bruises on my ribs or the swelling of my jaw. I've called the police on multiple occasions. I remember the first time I did it. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely punch the numbers into the keypad. I thought the sirens would bring a resolution. I thought the law was a solid thing that stood between me and a fist. I was wrong. I've started to see police officers as nothing more than decorative objects. They are like the stone lions people put on their porches. They look impressive and they suggest authority, but they don't actually do anything when the house is on fire. They come, they stand in my living room with their heavy boots and their clicking belts, and they look at me with a sort of exhausted pity. My husband, meanwhile, transforms. He becomes the most reasonable man in the world. He talks about tensions at home and how we're both working through some things. He offers them water. He looks concerned for me. And because I'm shaking and crying and can't formulate a coherent sentence, I look like the unstable one. They tell me they can't make an arrest unless I press charges, and then they look at me as if to say, "Are you really going to make us do the paperwork for a fight that you'll probably forget by tomorrow?" So they leave. And when the door clicks shut behind them, the decorative objects are gone, and I am left alone with the man who now has a new reason to be angry. Today was a particularly bad day. It started with the weather, gray, heavy, and pressing. The economy has been a constant ghost in our house. My husband is in the working class, and right now, that class is being crushed. He's been working double shifts, his hands are always cracked and dry, and he came home today with the news that he didn't get the promotion he was promised. He's been gunning for it for 6 months. He's been the first one in, and the last one out. But the company is freezing everything. No raises, no promotions, no extra. I tried to say something helpful. I really did. I sat at the kitchen table while he paced the linoleum, his boots leaving muddy streaks that I knew I'd have to scrub later. I tried to tell him that it wasn't a reflection of his work. I said the economy is falling apart for everyone right now, that nobody is getting ahead, and that we would find a way to make it work on what we have. He stopped pacing. He looked at me, and I saw his jaw tighten. That's the signal. That's the moment the loving husband, mask slips, and the version of him that hates me takes over. He started getting agitated, his voice dropping to that low, vibrating growl that precedes a storm. I shut up. I've learned that once that vibration starts, words are just fuel. I retreated to the living room and sat on the edge of the sofa. I took out my laptop, mostly just to have something to look at so I didn't have to make eye contact. I opened Facebook and saw a message from my brother. My brother is the only person I talk to regularly. He lives 3 states away, and he's the only one who doesn't buy the perfect marriage act we put on for the rest of the family. We were just talking about his kids, my nephews. I was looking at a photo of them at a birthday party, feeling a localized ache in my chest because I haven't been allowed to visit them in 2 years. My husband walked into the room. He didn't even say anything at first. He just loomed over me, looking down at the screen. When he saw I was talking to my brother, he absolutely lost it. I don't understand why. My brother hasn't done anything to him. But in my husband's mind, any connection I have to my past life is a threat. It's a leak in the seal he's placed around me. He started screaming. He called me a snake, accusing me of bad-mouthing him to his enemies. He said I was probably laughing at him because he didn't get the promotion. I didn't even try to defend myself. I've learned that defenses are just seen as backtalk. I curled into a ball on the sofa, pulled my knees to my chest, and waited for it to be over. I closed my eyes and counted the seconds, waiting for the first hit. But it didn't come. There was a long silence, and I thought maybe he had walked away. I started to uncurl, my neck stiff and my breath shallow. I moved to get up, thinking I would go to the kitchen and start dinner, as if nothing had happened.
He wasn't gone.
He was standing right beside the sofa, waiting for me to move. Before I could even stand, he lunged. He didn't use his hands to hit me this time. He grabbed me by the throat with both hands and pinned me back against the cushions. I've been hit plenty of times, but I have never been choked. It is a different kind of terror. When someone hits you, there is a rhythm to it. There is the impact, and then the space between. When someone chokes you, the space disappears. The world started to go dark at the edges. I couldn't draw air. I could feel the pulse in my own neck thudding against his palms. I honestly thought he was going to end me right there, on the sofa he bought me for our second anniversary. I looked at his face, and it wasn't even angry anymore. He just looked focused, like he was trying to solve a difficult puzzle. He must have gotten bored or realized he didn't want the legal headache of a body in the living room, because he suddenly let go. I slumped over, gasping, my throat feeling like it had been lined with broken glass. He didn't apologize. He didn't cry. He just turned around and walked out to the garage. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed my laptop and ran for the bathroom. I locked the door, and then I slid the heavy wooden vanity stool in front of it. I know it won't stop him if he really wants to get in, but it'll give me a few seconds of warning. I'm writing this now, sitting on the floor with my back against the tub. I have no idea what I'm going to do next. My life is a series of dead ends. I have zero savings. When we got married, he was so insistent that I be a stay-at-home wife. He told me he wanted me to focus on my art and manage the house. He made it sound like a gift. Now I see it for what it was, a calculated move to ensure I never had a dollar that he didn't give me. I don't even have a driver's license. It expired a year ago. It was an oversight on my part. I just forgot the date, but once it was gone, he made sure it stayed gone. Every time I ask him to take me to the DMV to renew it, he has an excuse. He's too tired, he's too busy, or he doesn't trust me behind the wheel because I'm too emotional. He knows that without a license, I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck in this house unless he decides to drive me out of it. I don't even have enough change for bus fare to get to the DSS building. Not that they would help me anyway. I tried once. I walked 4 miles to the local office after he'd thrown a chair at me. I sat in that waiting room for 3 hours, only for a caseworker to tell me that I couldn't claim homelessness because I had a stable residence to return to. They look at the tax bracket, not the person. They see a woman with a roof over her head and a husband with a job, and they decide I'm not a priority. I'm sitting here listening to the garage door open and close. I don't know if he's leaving or coming back inside. I'm terrified that if I stay here, the next time he gets bored or agitated, he won't stop. I feel like a ghost in my own life, just waiting for the person who owns the house to decide I've haunted the place for too long. Am I the a-hole for even thinking about running when he's at his lowest point? He's struggling, he's failing, and I'm supposed to be his partner. But how can I be a partner to a man who wants to stop me from breathing? Update. A lot has happened since I last wrote, and things didn't unfold as cleanly as I had hoped when I made that plan in the bathroom. I'm glad my brother was able to help me, but I shouldn't have gotten him involved. He's 16 and just started driving. He's really good at it though, most likely because our father spent a lot of time teaching him before he even turned 16. On private property, of course. The day my brother came to get me is burned into my memory in a way that feels sharper than everything that led up to it. He showed up exactly when he said he would, and for a moment it felt like everything might actually work out without any chaos. He pulled into the driveway like it was any normal visit, like he was just stopping by, and that alone made it feel unreal. We didn't waste time. I already had a small list in my head of what mattered. Clothes, a few personal things, my laptop, documents I could find quickly. It wasn't a full move. It was more like grabbing pieces of a life that I wasn't sure I'd ever see again. My brother didn't say much while we were packing. He just moved quickly, focused, trying to keep things quiet. That window didn't last long. My husband came home early, and I still don't know why. It was the kind of timing that doesn't make sense unless you believe in the worst possible luck. His car pulled in while we were still inside, and everything shifted instantly. There wasn't time to hide what we were doing or pretend it was something else. He walked in, saw the bags, saw my brother, and it escalated immediately. There wasn't a build-up. It went straight into yelling, the kind that carries through walls and out into the street. It didn't take long before neighbors started noticing. I saw people outside, standing at a distance watching. No one stepped in, which didn't surprise me at that point. My brother didn't stay quiet. That was probably the biggest difference from every other time something like this happened. Usually it was just me trying to make things smaller, quieter, less noticeable. This time there was someone else in the room who wasn't willing to shrink. Things got physical fast. My husband grabbed him, and everything after that feels disjointed. I don't remember making a decision. I just remember the moment where my brother wasn't free to move, and something in me snapped into action. The next clear image I have is my husband on the ground, blood coming from his nose, and my brother behind me. The police showed up not long after. I assume someone outside called. The situation was loud enough that it would have been impossible to ignore completely. When they came in, my husband tried to turn it into something else, but he didn't hold it together the way he usually does. He was still angry, still loud, and when they tried to calm him down, he made the mistake of putting his hands on one of them. That changed everything. He was arrested on the spot. There wasn't any back and forth about it. They separated everyone, asked questions, and took statements. I was expecting the worst for myself, honestly. I thought there was a real chance I would end up in trouble for hitting him. Instead, they told me I wasn't being charged. They didn't frame it as encouragement, more like a warning that situations like that can go either way depending on how things play out. Once they took him away, everything went quiet in a way that didn't feel normal. The house didn't feel like a place anymore. It just felt like something I needed to leave as quickly as possible. We didn't stay long after that. I grabbed the rest of what I could carry without dragging things out, and we left. The drive to my friend's place felt longer than it should have, even though nothing went wrong on the way. It was the first time in a long time that I wasn't bracing for something to happen at any second, and that alone felt strange. Getting to her place was the first time things slowed down enough for it to sink in that I was actually out. Not permanently, not safely in every sense, but out of that house. She made space for me without making it a big deal. There wasn't a long conversation about it right away, just a place to sit, a place to sleep, and a sense that I didn't have to watch the door. The first night there wasn't restful. It wasn't bad either, just unfamiliar. Every sound felt like something I needed to track. It took time to realize that no one was coming through the door unannounced. The days after that have been a mix of practical steps and things that feel almost normal. I started looking at jobs right away. It's been a while since I've worked, so I had to rebuild a resume from older experience and anything I could reasonably include. It's not perfect, but it's enough to start applying. I've already had a couple of responses, mostly entry-level or part-time positions, but it's still something. Even just getting emails back has made it feel less like I'm stuck in place. I've also started the process of getting my license sorted out again. That part is slower than I'd like, mostly because of paperwork and appointments, but at least it's moving. Not having it for so long made everything harder than it needed to be, and I can see that clearly now. As for my husband, I don't have direct contact with him anymore. Everything I know has come through secondhand information or what I've been told about the arrest. He was charged after the incident with the officer, and from what I understand, that's what's keeping things from being brushed aside the way it was before. There's a chance he'll try to reach out at some point, but I haven't had to deal with that yet. For now, there's distance, and that's something I'm not taking for granted. My brother has been checking in constantly. I still feel conflicted about involving him, especially with how things played out. He's 16, and none of that should have been something he had to deal with. At the same time, he was the reason I got out when I did. That part isn't something I can ignore. He's been acting like it was no big deal, but I can tell it affected him. He asks more questions than he used to, not just about how I'm doing, but about what happens next. I don't always have clear answers for that. My friend has been steady through all of this. She needed help with rent, and I needed somewhere to go, so it's worked out in a practical sense. It doesn't feel like I'm just taking space from her. There's an understanding that this is temporary and that I'm working towards something more stable. I've had moments where things feel almost normal again. Small things, like sitting with a laptop without worrying about who's behind me, or making plans for the next day without factoring in someone else's mood. Those moments don't last all day, but they happen more often now than they did before. I haven't gone back to the house, and I don't plan to unless it becomes necessary for legal reasons. There are still things there, but none of them feel worth going back for right now. As for everything that led up to this, it doesn't feel distant yet. It's still recent enough that it sits close to the surface. But it also doesn't feel like something that's still happening, and that difference matters more than anything else at the moment. I'm not in a perfect situation, not even close. But I'm not locked in a bathroom wondering if I'm going to make it through the night either. That's about as clear a change as I can point to. For now, I'm focusing on getting stable, getting back on my own feet, and making sure I don't end up back in anything like that again. Everything else can figure itself out later. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Daily Tales Update for more such stories.